because there's a lot of things going on, and I think it's very important for the American people to understand from people that are willing to tell them the truth. So, because not a lot of people want to tell you the truth. They want to go with, oh, geez, can't say anything bad about Trump. It could hurt my business. I can't say anything bad about this person. Let me get in line. Oh, all the crypto bros and the billionaires are supporting Trump. Let me get in line with them. But it's not, people don't want to tell you the truth, Scott. You see? And I think at this point in American history, the truth is super important. And at least my version of the truth, right? Or maybe there's different, for everyone has their own truth. But, I see Trump as a very malevolent figure. And I see Trump as somebody that, even if you like elements of his policies, the man and what he represents and how he thinks is very, very dangerous. And if you don't want to accept that from me, that's fine. But I would just ask you to please think about the 40 other people that worked in the cabinet, worked in the White House, were in the Situation Room with him, were part of the decision-making during the Trump administration. There's 40 of 44 people that have said, I'm sorry, I can't support this, including the vice president of the United States that was on the ticket with him for 2 successive election cycles.
So you have a story that really came from, and I don't like to use the word nothing, because we all were blessed enough to have food on the table, even if it wasn't enough at times. And, all those things. I've read your book and understand your storyline. But you had a drive to create and to do something bigger. And obviously that a lot of times draws you into finance, because Goldman Sachs is, hey, it's a way out. It's a ticket out. And politics, interestingly enough, drew you in. I saw the correlation to the Michael J. Fox character, in Family Ties, which, he was my favorite character on growing up. I had an uncle that was super involved in campaigns and doing all kinds of fun stuff, and just watching that storyline was also the dream, like the dream of becoming something from not much. And I see that storyline inside. And now, I'm summarizing a little bit, but you've gone into politics in a way where you've never been in politics, but you talk politics, and it's about expressing your opinions, and how they may or may not help people is the objective. And one thing I'm curious about is your previous conservative leaning, and the switch or change over to the challenge. Is it the way that the candidates have adjusted? Like, are there conservative candidates that you could be behind that you would really enjoy seeing?
All the time. Listen, you could find me on the donor list of people like David McCormick, the senator from Pennsylvania. David's a dear friend. I know him very well. I'm a little upset with David that he's like riding in the Trump chariot, but this is what politicians have to do. Mark Esper is a personal friend of mine, the former Secretary of Defense. Said, Mark, you're such a bright guy. You're so good on policy. You're an engaging person. You're a lover of people. Why don't you run? I don't want to lie all day, Anthony. I don't want to spend my day lying, right? So David has to tell people that he's in love with Trump, and he's holding his nose. There were people, and they'll remain nameless because they're friends of mine, they'll be mad at me, but they worked in the administration. They say, geez, every time I'm in the room with Donald Trump, I feel like I have to take a shower. He's just so slimy, and he's so unethical in terms of the way he thinks. And so people then should say, well, Anthony, why'd you go work for him? And the answer is, I went to work for him because there were 2 candidates. I was a lifelong Republican, and I thought it was the right thing to do to work for the Republican candidate. And so that was a mistake by me, and I've owned that. You've referenced my book, and so I talk very honestly in my book about owning mistakes. I was at this school, and a kid asked me a question. I'm going to bring it up here because I think it's very important for your podcast because of the acronym that you're using related to life. And the kid said to me, you read a lot. And I said, yes, I do. I have a podcast called Open Book where I interview authors. And what's your favorite fictional literary character? That's what he said to me. Right? Think about it, right? You got Don Corleone, you got a lot of fictional literary characters, right? And I said, well, I don't know what my favorite is. I'm going to tell you who the most important fictional literary character is in all of literature. And it's an obscure character, Scott, and it's Cassandra. and it's from the Iliad. And so I'm just going to remind people of their Western literature studies. Who was Cassandra? She was gifted by the goddesses with the gift of clairvoyance. She could see the future and she could tell the truth to people. But she was cursed also by the goddesses that no one would believe her. And so she went to her father, who was the king of Troy. She says, "This is a really bad move. Your son, my brother, stole Helen, the wife of Menelaus, and brought her back here. And the Greeks are going to launch 1,000 ships. They're going to come here and burn down the city. It's a really bad move." And Priam said, "Relax. You don't know what you're talking about. Go sit in the corner." And Homer, 3,000 years ago, was trying to tell us something about ourselves. We can't handle the truth. Aaron Sorkin took this idea and he pumped it into the script that Jack Nicholson was a part of in A Few Good Men. You remember the scene. You want the truth? No, you don't want the truth. You can't handle the truth. And our politicians know this, which is why they lie to us. But I think Homer was trying to say with Cassandra, we live in denialism. Why do we deny ourselves? Well, we're fearing death. We wake up in the morning, we know it's temporary. We've seen loved ones pass, so we know we'll eventually pass. But we have to have some level of a self-lie to keep us going. And so all of our life is through this prism of denialism. But Homer's point, and Marcus Aurelius made this point, if we can see the truth and we can face the truth, we can find peace in ourselves and we can find the right way to do things. And so it's important for me to say all of this to you because we are in a haze of dishonesty right now. Both sides practice it. It's very, very dangerous. But what should we want? We should want clean water and fresh air. We should want our kids to do better than we're doing. We should want policies that are not hard left or hard right, but that are right or wrong for the society, as opposed to hard left or hard right. And if we don't have people in the society that are going to call balls and strikes, I'm hated by both sides, by the way. Okay, I get lit up by both sides. My 32-year-old son said to me, "Dad, you're killing me, killing my networking opportunities." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you were with Trump, and now you think he's an asshole, so you left Trump, so the Republicans hate you. And since you were with Trump, the Democrats are never going to accept you. Okay, and I'm walking around with your last name. You're killing me, Dad. You're killing me." I'm like, "All right, well, I'm trying to get to the truth, son." You see what I mean? And so this is where we are right now in our society, a big, big inflection point. And this election is going to matter. It's not going to matter as much as people think, but it is going to matter.
It's interesting because we saw Joe Biden do a horrendous job at a debate, and I don't know how the American people can look at an administration that has been hiding the fact that this man is unable to perform. And so I know from a perspective, and I've heard you talk a little bit about this on the podcast that you do. And so it's interesting to me, though, when you talk about the challenges and we talk about the lies, politics tends to be who's saying something louder, right? Whose storyline is more believable. And I think the hard part is we do individually have to come up with our own logic of what we feel is most important and maybe which storyline we relate to the most. But I tend to believe that not only do people not want to handle the truth, but it's very difficult to find it. I mean, if I turn on the news, I watched the news the other day, and I hate the news, by the way. I can't stand watching the news. I try to keep it off because it always, I'm a make the world a better place kind of person. And I want to find the problem. What you're describing to me and what your son's challenge is that you are doing the best job that you can to find in your mind, to find the truth, to find the route. And so when I watch the news, I get enraged. I get frustrated. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I get tense, right? Because I want to fix it or find something that's true. And yet I see storylines constantly, and I know when I'm being manipulated. This is not everybody follows this, but I follow when I see everything leaning in one direction or all the storylines lining up in certain directions. And it's really hard to avoid that and to find truth today. And so you have to find who you believe in and follow that. And it can be challenging when it's the wrong humans, right?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I want to be fair. There's truth on both sides,
Right.
and there's lies on both sides, and there's distortion on both sides. You can't say that Donald Trump is a liar and then you're lying to your group too. You're telling people Joe Biden is fit as a fiddle. He's on the Peloton every morning. He's sharp as a tack. And you'll see an unbelievable mover and shaker of Joe Biden come the debate, and he can't put sentences together, and then you know that they're telling you a lie, right? So yeah, Trump told 55 lies in 90 minutes. He's averaging roughly one lie every 90 seconds or whatever it was. But you've got the other team lying too. So guys, what do you guys really want to do? And by the way, because of people like you, Scott, and the world of social media and the fragmentation of media in general, it's harder to get away with nonsense now. When FDR was dying, and it was 80 years ago, 1944, he's dying. Okay, we got to pick somebody that we're going to accept as president, somebody that's more moderate than Henry Wallace. Out goes Wallace. FDR basically says to the DNC, hey, I'm dying, man. You better pick somebody you guys like, because I'm not going to make it to the end of the term. Okay, but nobody knows that. David McCullough writes about it, 30, 40 years later, but nobody knows that, right? We're sitting there. All of this stuff is held back. You can't do that anymore. There's no hiding. If the White House was a fishbowl in 1944, it's a full-on international aquarium today, right? There's no running from the observation of the facts. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And and it's the same thing when you're having a war. If you're going to have a war, okay, people die in a war. Imagine the graphic pictures that would have been on social media during the Second World War. Okay, the Holocaust, the genocidal maniacs murdering innocent people, the bombing of Dresden, the bombing of Tokyo, the firebombing that took place where civilians were killed. 400,000 German civilians were killed by the British who were bombing them, and several 100,000 Brits were killed by the Germans. My point is we're in a world now, weird world. We're in the post-truth world where we've got all of these bad actors making shit up on the internet, but we're also in a hard to really tell the big lie world too. It's very hard to do it now because of all of the same reasons, all the same issues.
Yeah, it makes it harder to have conversations with people that differ in opinion from you because opinions become so emotional. So one of the challenges that I think people are having is, there's a time where you could sit across from each other and challenge each other on what you believe and why you believe it, and there was a respect for the human on the other side. The assassination attempt happens, and I can't tell you how many people I saw on social media say things like, how could they miss? Or, no matter how bad someone doesn't like you, you don't root for chaos in the political world. But today emotions drive those things. Same thing about Joe Biden. If he is senile, if he is challenged to the point where he can't make decisions anymore, he's an elderly man who's dedicated his life to politics and doing what he felt was best. There's a level of respect that goes with the sides. And I've had a couple conversations with close family members who I know respect my opinions, and they sometimes make some of those aggressive types of statements. And I'm not a firm believer that they're valuable. I think they're wasteful when you're leading with hate, when you're leading with negativity. It's a wasteful thing. But I think we're leading with so much emotions because of the very point you just made, which is, imagine seeing the 400,000 Germans that were dying. Imagine seeing the young men, 18, 17 years old. How many Italian young men were lying about their age to go to war so they could actually be a part of something bigger than themselves and make a difference? How many of my friends joined after 9/11 that are Navy SEALs that just retired and have dedicated their lives to following the principles that make our great country great, but also questioning whether or not something was real or not, or if they believed in it? Or there's so much stuff, but the emotion, I think, is getting in the way because there is so much emotion and a lot less logic. If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.